I died at 19. It wasn't dramatic. There was no accident, no argument, no last confession. I died quietly, in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and loneliness. The floor beside me had long stopped dripping. My phone lay on the bedside table, dark and silent. I waited. I waited for footsteps, for a familiar voice, for someone to remember me. No one came. Later, I learned that outside the hospital, my family was attending Lucy's engagement banquet. Red decorations, laughter, toasts to a bright future. My parents smiling with pride. My brothers drinking happily. I was not part of that future. When my breathing became shallow, no one noticed. When my heart stopped, there was no rush, no panic. In the end, no one even came to claim my body. I disappeared from the world as quietly as I had lived in it. That was how my first life ended. Then I opened my eyes. The ceiling above me was unfamiliar. Pale yellow. Slightly cracked. Sunlight leaked through thin curtains, warm and unreal. I could hear voices outside the door. My heart began to pound before I even understood why. I sat up. My body felt light. Too light. My hands were small, smooth, untouched by 4 needles or hospital tape. I ran to the mirror. The girl staring back at me was 13 years old. My breath caught in my throat. I knew this day. I remembered it clearly. This was the day I returned to my biological family, the day everything began to go wrong in my last life. Outside the door, I heard my mother's voice. "Be gentle with Lucy today," she said. "She didn't sleep well." My father replied calmly, "This child is the real one. She needs to understand the rules." The real one. I stood there, frozen, my reflection staring back at me with eyes that hadn't yet learned how to hide disappointment. In my last life, I cried on this day. I begged them to like me. I tried to prove I belonged. I told them I could be good, obedient, useful, anything. This time, I didn't cry. I picked up my school bag and opened the door. At the dining table, Lucy sat between my parents. She wore a soft white sweater and held her spoon delicately, as if even eating required effort. When she saw me, her eyes immediately filled with tears. "Sister," she whispered, voice trembling. My mother stood up at once. "Lucy, don't cry. No one is replacing you." Replacing. That word hit me harder than I expected. My father glanced at me over his newspaper. His expression was cool, assessing. "Sit down," he said. "Don't make things awkward." That was my welcome home. I sat at the far end of the table. The food was elaborate, things I had never eaten before coming here in my last life. It tasted exactly the same as I remembered. Expensive. Cold. Lucy barely touched her food. "Lucy, eat a little more," my mother coaxed. "I'm not hungry," Lucy said softly, then looked at me with guilty eyes. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I feel like this." My father sighed. "She's too sensitive." No one noticed that I finished my bowl without a word. My eldest brother, David, nodded politely at me, like I was a distant relative. My younger brother, Eric, looked at me with curiosity, then quickly turned away when Lucy sniffled again. On the way to school, my mother held Lucy's hand. I walked 2 steps behind them. "You're older now," my mother said without turning around. "You should be more understanding of Lucy." I answered quietly, "I will." At school, whispers followed me everywhere. "That's the real daughter. She doesn't look special. Lucy is much prettier." I pretended not to hear them. That night, lying on a bed that didn't really belong to me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about my last life. I remembered how hard I tried. How I waited. How I believed that if I did everything right, they would eventually choose me. This time, I made a different decision. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't fight Lucy for attention. I would study. I would endure. I would live well. If I became good enough, outstanding enough, surely they would see me one day. At 13, I still believed that love could be earned. I closed my eyes, unaware that some families are perfectly capable of watching their own child shine and still looking the other way. Time passed quietly. That was how my teenage years unfolded, without ceremony, without pause. I learned early that in this house, silence was the safest way to exist. At 15, I won my first academic competition. It was a sitter-level math contest, the kind that usually made parents proud. My teacher called my family personally. She sounded excited, even impressed. That evening, my mother asked, "Did Lucy eat dinner?" I told her about the competition. She paused for a second, then said, "That's good. Don't let it make you arrogant." That was the end of it. Lucy fell sick that night. She lay on the sofa with a pale face and trembling fingers. My mother sat beside her, feeding her warm water. My father frowned and blamed the weather. No one connected the timing. At 16, I noticed a pattern. Whenever I did well, Lucy suffered. Whenever Lucy cried, I became the problem. During midterms, Lucy developed a fever the night before my most important exam. My mother knocked on my door at midnight. "Can you make some porridge?" she asked. "Lucy can't sleep." I told her I had an exam at 8. She sighed, disappointed. "You're older. Why are you so selfish?" I went to the kitchen. I failed that exam. Lucy recovered by the weekend. No one mentioned it again. By then, my brothers had chosen their sides without realizing it. David believed in fairness, but fairness to him meant avoiding trouble. Eric believed emotions, and Lucy's emotions were always louder than mine. Once, my school project disappeared the day before submission. I searched everywhere. When I asked Lucy if she had seen it, her eyes filled with tears. "I would never do something like that," she said. "My father didn't look at me. Why are you accusing her?" I apologized. I rewrote the project overnight. Another time, Lucy tripped on the stairs and cried that I pushed her. My mother slapped me before I could speak. "How could you do something like this?" she shouted. I stood there, stunned, my face burning. Lucy cried harder. "Please don't fight because of me." That night, my cheek swelled. No one asked if it hurt. At 17, I stopped explaining myself. I focused on studying. I stayed late at school. I learned how to be excellent quietly. When the university acceptance letter arrived, I held it in my hands for a long time. A top university. One of the best in the country. I went home with the letter folded neatly in my bag. Before I could speak, Lucy smiled shyly and said, "Mom, Dad, I'm in a relationship." The room exploded with sound. My mother covered her mouth in surprise. My father laughed for the first time in weeks. Eric clapped. David smiled warmly. "Who is he? When did this happen? Is he good to you?" I stood there, forgotten. Later that night, my father noticed the letter by accident. "Oh," he said. "That's good. Just focus on yourself. Don't compare. Don't compare." Lucy had a small celebration with cake and photos. I stood at the edge of the frame, smiling when told to smile. At university, I learned freedom. No one watched me. No one blamed me for someone else's tears. Professors praised me openly. Classmates respected me. For the first time, I felt visible. But at home, nothing changed. Lucy began to change too. She laughed less easily. She mentioned me often to others, never to me. "She's so cold," she would say. "She doesn't care about family anymore." When relatives praised me, Lucy smiled tightly and fell ill soon after. My mother called me one night. "Why are you always competing with Lucy?" I asked quietly, "What am I competing for?" She didn't answer. That was when I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. It didn't matter how well I did. It didn't matter whether I was right or wrong. In this family, Lucy was the emotion that mattered. I was the responsibility. And responsibilities don't get loved. They get used. When winter came, I started coughing more often. At first, I ignored it. I had learned very well how to ignore myself. University was the first place where no one knew Lucy. That alone made it feel unreal. I moved into the dorm with one suitcase and a cardboard box of books. No one came to see me off. My mother sent a short message reminding me to call home on weekends. My father reminded me not to waste money. My brothers reacted with a thumbs up emoji. I wasn't surprised. I learned how to live efficiently. Morning classes, afternoon library, evening part-time work. I joined academic teams, entered competitions, published papers. My name began to appear on notice boards. People noticed me. When professors asked about my family, I said they were proud. It was easier than explaining silence. During my second year, I returned home for a short holiday. Lucy greeted me with a gentle smile. She had changed, more polished, more careful. She asked about my studies in front of my parents. When I answered, my father frowned. "Don't be arrogant." Lucy laughed softly. "Sister works very hard. I admire her." That night, my mother said, "Lucy feels pressured by you. Try not to talk about your achievements so much." I nodded. Old habits die slowly. At school, a national competition announcement came out. My professor encouraged me to apply. When the shortlist was released, my name was at the top. Relatives congratulated my parents. Lucy stopped eating. She developed stomach pain, then insomnia. My mother called me every night, voice tired and accusing. "Why do you always have to be so outstanding?" she asked once. "Do you know how stressed Lucy is?" I closed my eyes and apologized. Lucy sent me a message, "I'm not blaming you. I just feel useless sometimes." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply. That winter, my cough worsened. It started as a dry irritation, then deepened into something heavy. I woke up breathless some nights, my chest tight, throat burning. When I saw blood in the sink for the first time, I froze. The hospital smelled familiar. The doctor looked at my scans and spoke carefully. "It's serious," he said. "But it's treatable. You need rest and proper care." I asked how long. "At least several months." I nodded. On the bus back to campus, I called home. My mother sounded distracted. "Lucy is trying on wedding dresses." I told her about the diagnosis. There was a pause. Then she said, "Don't say things like that during such a happy time. You're young. Don't exaggerate." My father took the phone. "You've always been healthy. Don't be dramatic." That was the end of the call. Lucy's wedding preparations filled the family group chat. Venue photos. Menu choices. Guest lists. I typed a message, then deleted it. I continued going to class. Continued working. Continued coughing into tissues I threw away before anyone could see. Sometimes, when the pain was bad, I thought about resting. Then I remembered my mother's voice. "Don't cause trouble." The competition finals were in December. I won first place. I stood on stage under bright lights, holding a certificate. Applause filled the hall. My phone was silent. I went back to my dorm room alone and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. For a moment, I felt an overwhelming exhaustion, not just in my body, but somewhere deeper. I was tired of being strong. As Lucy's wedding approached, my mother called again. "Can you come home early to help? Lucy is under a lot of stress." I agreed. At home, Lucy looked radiant in her engagement photos. She hugged me lightly. "Sister, thank you for understanding," she whispered. I smiled. I coughed blood that night in the bathroom, quietly, so no one would hear. On the night before the wedding, the house was full of laughter. I packed my bag to return to campus early the next morning. My chest felt tight, my head light. In the dorm room, I tried to stand. The floor tilted. My phone slipped from my hand. I called home. No answer. I called my brothers. No answer. The room was cold. As darkness crept in, a strange calm settled over me. I wondered, briefly, if this was how it ended last time too, me waiting, and no one coming. I died before sunrise. There was no pain at the end, only a spreading cold, like winter finally reaching my bones. The dorm room was quiet. My phone lay beside my hand, the screen dark after too many unanswered calls. I don't remember the exact moment my breathing stopped. I only remember thinking that it was very unfair how easy it was for the world to continue without me. Morning came anyway. At the hotel, my family was busy. The wedding makeup room was loud with laughter and instructions. Lucy sat in front of the mirror in a white dress, her face glowing, her eyes slightly red, perfectly emotional. "She's so beautiful," my mother said, crying happily. My father stood straight, proud. My brothers adjusted their suits. No one noticed the phone vibrating in a drawer. My name flashed on the screen again and again until the battery died. The wedding went smoothly. Guests applauded. Cameras flashed. Promises were made about love lasting forever. I was declared missing 2 days later. At first, my family thought I was sulking. "She's probably upset about something small," my mother said. "She's always been sensitive." By the third day, irritation turned into unease. My dorm was unlocked by staff. They found me on the bed. Too still. Too light. When my mother arrived at the hospital, she screamed for the first time in her life. Not the controlled sobs she used when Lucy cried, but a raw, broken sound that tore through the hallway. My father stood frozen. David didn't speak. Eric punched the wall until his knuckles bled. They said my phone was still in my hand. They said my call history was full of unanswered calls to home. The doctor spoke calmly. If she had rested earlier, the outcome might have been different. No one answered him. A week later, a thick envelope arrived at the house. A DNA report. Delayed. Overlooked. Forgotten in some administrative backlog for years. The results were clear. I was the biological daughter. I always had been. There was a note attached. Lucy had known. She had known for a long time. The room collapsed. My mother fainted. My father dropped the paper, hands shaking. For the first time, he knelt on the living room floor, in front of no one. "I was wrong," he said hoarsely. My brothers lost control. David stopped sleeping. Eric drove through the night, searching places I had once mentioned casually. They searched my school, my dorm, the library, my favorite cafe. They found my things. My notebooks, filled with neat handwriting. Certificates. Awards. Receipts. No complaints. No accusations. Just a quiet life, carefully lived. Finally, they found me. An urn. Small. Light. Too light for a daughter who had lived twice and still been abandoned. At the memorial hall, my father held the urn with trembling hands. My mother screamed my name until her voice disappeared completely. Lucy didn't come. Someone said she was sick. As they stood there, surrounded by white flowers, they began to understand something too late. I had never fought Lucy. I had never tried to steal anything. I had only wanted to be seen. But regret doesn't bring people back. Love given too late weighs nothing at all. If I could speak to them now, I wouldn't accuse them. I wouldn't cry. I would only say this. I was reborn once and still not chosen. Some people are not destined for happiness. They are born to walk through love untouched. So that others can finally learn what regret feels like when it's permanent. Mother POV. Grace used to believe she was a good mother. She had raised a gentle daughter. She had protected a fragile heart. She had kept the family peaceful. That was what she told herself when she lay awake at night. After the funeral, the house became unbearably quiet. There was no soft crying from Lucy's room. No requests for warm water. No gentle voice calling her mom. Only silence. Grace began to notice things she had never noticed before. A pair of worn slippers by the guest bathroom. A jacket folded neatly at the end of the sofa. A chipped mug, always washed and put back in the same place. They all belonged to the daughter she had called understanding. Grace picked up the mug one morning and realized her hands were shaking. She remembered telling that child not to cause trouble. Remembered asking her to wait. To give in. To be mature. Grace had never once asked if she was tired. At night, Grace dreamed of 2 girls standing in the rain. One was crying loudly. The other was silent, already soaked through. In the dream, Grace always walked toward the sound. She woke up every time with her face wet and her chest aching, unable to breathe. Grace stopped cooking dishes that required 2 sets of chopsticks. She couldn't bear to see the empty space. For the first time, she understood something she had refused to accept for years. She hadn't lost a daughter. She had abandoned one. And the world had not given her a third chance. Father POV. Robert had always believed regret was a useless emotion. Mistakes, in his mind, were problems to be fixed. People either corrected them or moved on. He had built his life on logic, authority, and control. Until he held the urn. It was lighter than his briefcase. That weight haunted him. At night, Robert sat alone in his study, staring at certificates framed on the wall. He had hung them himself: academic awards, competition rankings, university honors. He remembered saying, "Don't be arrogant. Focus on yourself. Don't compare." Now he understood what those words had really meant. They had meant, "Don't ask me to care." Robert replayed memories like evidence in a trial he could no longer win. A girl standing at the edge of family photos. A voice reporting achievements without expectation. A calm expression that never demanded anything. He had called that discipline. It was resignation. Robert knelt once in his life. Not for forgiveness. Not for redemption. Only because his legs could no longer hold the weight of what he had destroyed. He realized then that authority could silence a child. But it could not bring her back. And some verdicts are delivered only after the sentence is complete.